like this scene. Now I'm going to start with the floor, and so I'm going to go to Photoshop, and I'm going to import my floor UVs. They'll look like this, like there's nothing there, but if I go G, like I press the G key to the fill tool, and I add a new layer, fill, drag it below, you'll see the lines. I'm going to right click this to make it red so that I know these are where the lines are. Now I need this octagonal floor with these squares, so I'm just going to go search something like this. I can see them. I've got the image, but they're not the right colors. So I'm going to make my own custom tileable texture. I'm just going to go to File, New, and I'm going to say 1024 by 1024, 72. Make sure that it says pixels instead of inches, because this will be huge if it's inches. And then I'm going to go down, gray is fine. I'm just going to hit create. Now for that texture, I actually need, add another layer, I'm going to need a hexagon and some squares. Now I'm just going to go, your tool will be custom shape. I'm just going to go down to polygon, and I'm going to make sure this is set to white, no stroke. I'm just going to drag out really quickly. Now if I come over here, make sure it says 8 sides. If I click on this, I can drag up. Alright, and press M so I can scale it. Now I have to guess how this is going to tile when I'm done. Let's get ourselves a square, rectangle. Make sure I hold shift so that it stays proportionate. Something like this, press M so I can move it around. Control T to go to free transform, and I'm going to hold shift to lock it at 15 degrees or so. How do I know if these are going to tile correctly? Let's see, I'm going to go to View, Pattern Preview. Anything I do, like if I add a new layer and I press B and I draw, you can see how it's going to tile across everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this rectangle. Let's just take this, and if I look at this pattern here, and I look at it, it looks like I get a triangle here, 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 here. So let's take this, and I'm just going to duplicate it with Control J, scoot it over by holding Control. It's like, well, they don't need to touch the edges, so something like this. So this one's too big. I'm just hit Control T, shrink it down some. Control J, try it again. And I want to make sure that there's a space between here is the same on all the sides. So I'm just going to add a new layer. And I like using the green. Just a little bitty rectangle. Press M so I can move it around. And I just want the distances to all be about the same. Control J, scoot that over. Alright, so I've got these two polygons here. These, not polygons, octagons. I just click one, hold shift, click another one so I can grab both of them. And I'm going to make them just a touch larger together, because I'm trying to get this internal dimension to be similar. Just going to hold Control and use the arrow tools to move. That looks pretty nice. Let's see how it's tiling. Looks like the distance between these are too much. Let's just grab both of these. Control T. What are you? That's my problem. Green. I need you to be here, halfway between these. All right. Grab these two, Control J, hold down Control, and press the down arrow to move. If I hold down Control and Shift, I can move them more quickly. I'm just gonna hold Z to zoom out. That's looking pretty nice. Now, the space at the bottom and the space at the top aren't quite the same, so I'm just gonna grab this and hold Shift and grab these, Control and Shift. Turn off these locks, wrong hotkey. Control, Shift, just move them up. This is an equal distance away from everything. Now, press M. I'm going to go to this. This is my U. Turn off my distance pieces. My rectangle. Let's shrink you down some. And I'm going to change this thing's color so that it's easy to grab. Just Control J, duplicate it. Grab both of these, Control J, Control, Shift, plus the up arrow. All right, so that looks pretty nice and titled. I'm just looking over there. Hide this. I'm going to go to View, turn Pattern Preview off. Nope, I turned Pattern Preview back on. I needed to add a few more. It was filling in information. So Control J, Control Shift down. I need this one, and this one. So let's see. U and U. Just scooting them so I can keep track of them. And if I want to find something, I can hit V and hold down Control and click. There you are. Drag U to the top. So now I've got all three of these. Control J, Control, Shift, scoot. And to make sure these are working, I'm just going to go View, Pattern Preview again, and just hold down Control. Make sure the spaces are pretty much even. I'm getting some trouble here, so I'm just going to press V to go to the Move tool, hold down Control, and click. Where are you at? View, Pattern Preview, just holding Control to find it. And you, where are you at? You are at the top. You are almost at the bottom. View, Pattern Preview, grab all of these, press M to go to the Move tool. I'm just going to hold down Control and Shift, scoot you up. View, Pattern Preview off. Alright, so I'm pretty sure this thing, I would like to have these a little bit taller. I'm just going to select all the whites. hold Control, go up. And just one more check over here. I believe that that's close enough. View, pattern preview off. Now I'm going to grab all of these white sections. I'm just going to hold Shift, grab the top, Control G to put them in a folder. I'm just going to get rid of these measuring sections. Grab all these little red ones, Control G, put them in a folder. Now I'm just going to grab both of them. Let's say this one's 8 sides, 4 sides, Control Shift G. Now I'm going to drag these into here. They're a little big, but because they're vectors, I can scale them down. And if I go to this, you see that I've got a set of 4, and from here to here, it looks like there's 2 sets of these panels, 1, 2, 3. There's probably one behind us, and each one has 4. I bet that they have 2 stacks of these. 1, 2, 3. I'd guess. Let's see. So I've got this. I'm just going to hit Control J, Shift, scoot this over. I'm actually going to make these larger so that right now I don't have enough pixels to show it. What are you doing? I'm going to ignore the lines here. I promise this will eventually make sense. Grab all of these. Just gonna put them in a folder. Control J, Control Shift, scoot them down. And let's do that one more time. So we've got 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to put all those in a folder. I'm going to press Control J, and I'm going to mush them flat. So now they're not vectors at all. Before I do that, I'm actually going to, before they're mushed flat, Control G, Control J, I'm just going to make them huge, like bigger than we need them to be. Maybe that big, and I'm just gonna Control E. That's going to make them not vectors anymore. They're still crisp. I'm gonna convert to Smart Object, and this will let me change their size and it won't damage them. Let's duplicate to show it. I'm just gonna rasterize this layer, and if I shrink this object down, and then I don't like that size, and I try to Control T and bring it back up, I lose detail because it's getting destroyed. But if I do the same thing with this layer, it saves this picture in another file so that anytime it does it, it resamples it so that I don't lose that information. Now, I've got this, and now I need to turn it into stone. There's a couple of ways I can do this. first way I'm going to do is I've got textures. I'm going to find some rocky texture, something like this for the mortar. So I'm going to go behind this. Never make your textures bigger. I'm only doing this for speed's sake. Let's hold shift so I can alter it. This is going to be the mortar. If I look at this, the mortar is darker. So I'm just going to hit Control U. Darken it up a bit. Now I need something for the big squares. The big squares, if I look at them, seem pretty straight, pretty simple. You'll probably have to look for these. I suggest a site called textures.com. It is fantastic. I'm going to say that it's something maybe like this. And you rarely want to stretch textures. This is only for speed. I want to find a texture that's big enough. And then I need the little squares. And this is all just information so that each piece feels different. All right, so I'm going to go here and I want to select all the reds. So I'm going to press W to go to the magic wand. You might be on a different tool, but I suggest clicking the magic wand tool. And I'm going to go to, let's say, 10. So tolerance means if I select this, it will look for 10 pixels within the color that I select. And contiguous means that if it's not touching, it's just going to do this. If I turn contiguous off, it's going to grab every red thing here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go up to this rock texture that I want to be the little ones, and I can go to this layer and I'm going to add a mask, and now it's only going to show through the parts that are there. I'm going to do the same thing with the white. Grab this one, mask, and what's so handy about the mask is if I click this little thing off and I go to this layer, I'm just going to hit Control T. It'll let me reposition and move stuff around. It is pretty nice. Alright, so I've got this layer, and then I need the grout layer. And I'm just going to say, just make sure the grout is exactly where I need it. Past all these, but not tremendously past it. So I get the best resolution possible. Turn off this layer. Now, this doesn't look very impressive. Doesn't look much like this. So I see some red, and yellow mainly could be just from the lights, but I suggest that I think it's actually in the texture too. So I'm going to say that this right here, this one, is not very yellow. So I'm just going to click, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say to convert to smart object. Just saves a little picture of it. And on this layer, I'm just going to say, oh, and if I ever want to change the original, I can double click this. It'll open up the file with the mask in it. Pretty nice. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say filter, image, adjustments, hue and saturation. Right here it's Control U, and I'm just going to add some yellow. In fact, I may go above this layer. I'm just going to duplicate this, and I'm going to go Control U or image, adjustments, hue and saturation. And I'm going to say colorize. Add some of that yellow in. And that's too much, but I'm just going to come turn its opacity down. Now, I'm going to do that same thing, but I'm going to do it inside this layer. I'm just going to Control J to duplicate, Control U to bring up hue and saturation, colorize, yellow, turn the layer down. Just Control S to get it back. I don't need this anymore, I don't believe. Now I'm back here, and I can just close that if I don't want to come back to it. I think that's still too yellow. Back to this layer, turn it down, Control S to update it. Crazy, still too yellow. Oh, it's because this layer's still on. All right. Now let's make these things look like actually stones that are sticking up. So I'm just going to double click this layer to bring up options. And I'm going to go to bevel. Now that's crazy too much. I'm just going to turn down the depth. And instead of inner bevel, turn these all down. And now what's important is I don't want to make these really obvious where things are happening. I'm gonna, let's see, just want them to stand out. And instead of white, I'm gonna use the color so I get some yellows. And I'm gonna move this around. That's looking better. I'm gonna turn the darkness down because I don't want them to really stand out. Just a little bit. Because if I put the light, like the light seems like it's coming from this way, but what if in the game I put the light over here and it feels like it's being lit from a side that doesn't make any sense? I'm going to say that's good. I'm going to hit OK. I might also do drop shadow, just because ambient occlusion, like that's crazy too much. I'm going to say distance is directly on the object. And I'm going to say spread, because ambient occlusion, anything that gets too close to each other does this. And I'm going to turn down the opacity. Let's turn it off just a little bit. Hit OK. Now, I can do all that work on the other one, or I can just go to right-click, copy layer styles, go down to this one, paste layer styles. Now they look too similar, so I'm just going to double click on this one. I'm just going to say turn off global. See, if I do this, it'll move all of them around. And I'm just going to say turn off global so I can just do it to this one. And instead of black, I'm just going to select this, and then I'm going to choose a darker color, because black would just mess with its saturation. And if you see it's kind of smooth, I'm just going to go from smooth to Chinese, chisel hard, not Chinese. Makes the edges a little harder. And I'm going to say the size, turn it down some, depth, make it harder, soften it up, just smooth it just a little bit, turn it down just a little like that. Alright, I think that's good. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Just turn the depth up, turn the size down. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to darken the grout. I'm just going to go down here, Control U. Now if we look at this, the difference between the two of them, I'm actually going to drop this in this picture. And I'm going to sample some of these colors. I'm just going to go to the fill tool. I'm going to grab some of that red right there. And if yours doesn't sample it right, if I go to my eyedropper tool, see that it says 3x3? That's sampling 3 pixels on every side from what you select. Like if I select point sample, even though there's red here, when I click it, I'm getting brown. You can get wildly wrong colors. So I'm just going to make this much bigger, so like 11. So when I select, I want this kind of reddish color. And if I go to my brush tool and I make this bigger and I click, you see these colors don't match at all. I'm just going to scoot this over. I'm going to go over this one. And if I hold down Control, I can grab just this section. I'm going to go up and I'm going to fill. Here's G. Now I'm going to go to Mix. I'm just going to go through here. I'm going to find something. It's going to get me closer. Like that's too dark. But I think that's probably where we're going to go. So like here. And then I'm going to turn down the opacity to get us closer to that. Just Control U lets me adjust it. I'm just going to say I'm getting a lot closer. Just going to hit OK. Now it looks like there's too many details here, like by way too many. You see the details aren't as much. So I'm just going to go up. I'm just holding Control to grab this. I'm going to go up and I'm going to hit G, fill, turn this little splotch off. I'm just going to turn this down until there's not as many details. Something more like that. And I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm just going to hold Alt and I'm going to sample these. I've got some yellow. Grab these by holding Control and clicking the thumbnail. Fill. Something more like that. And I'm going to say that we're very likely in this dark spot. I'm just going to sample a smaller section, so back to my 3x3. And go fill in the grout the same way. You're just removing some of the detail. In fact, I think I'm going to make it even darker. Control U on that layer. I always go too far and then I just back it up. And now we've got a floor that actually feels kind of like this. These colors may be a little too different. Just going to darken that up just a touch. So not quite so different. Yeah, there we go. All right. Just going to grab all these layers all the way down, Control G. Name it Oct Floor. And I'm just going to Control J, duplicate that. Control E to merge it. And then I'm just going to convert to Smart Object. Close this. Duplicate it one more time. Throw away the stuff I don't need. Get my line layer back up. Put it at the very top. And the floor, let's see. I'm going to try to do, if I go to Max, and I click this, F3, and I unwrap, just going to see which section of this. So this is the floor, and I'm going to try to use this block for the floor and the walls. And that is going to be the walls, so here. All right, Just going to grab this thing, scoot it in here, and it's important that I try to line it up like I did before, so that when the pieces are next to each other, they still tile. And this is something that can actually be fixed inside of Max as long as you're kind of close. See, I want some space here and some space here. Just gonna shrink it in. I'm starting to realize this being that close is actually making what I'm doing difficult. Same with these things. So I'm probably going to change that. But let's say that works. And this square here, it's going to be stone. And we've got that here. I'm just going to grab a single brick section, something, and you want to spend the time and do this stuff right, but I know these are your early assignments. I'm going to grab something like this. Z, I'm holding Z and I click to drag, and then I held space to move. And something like that. And I'm going to hold Control J to duplicate it. Scoot it down. And I don't like this, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rasterize that layer. It's just something like that. It's going to remove some of this excess. Convert to rasterize. See how these textures are interfering with each other now? And these bricks not lining up, this is the one underneath it. I'm just going to add a mask. I'm going to go to my brush tool, and with black it's going to erase stuff, but it's a hard edge. So I'm just going to say softness. And I'm using brackets underneath the minus and plus sign on the keyboard to change the size of my brush. I'm just trying to make a smoother transition. I'm just going to scoot this layer up some. I would like to spend more time on it, but we'll say that's fine. I'm just going to grab these, merge. Now they're too dark. If I look at them, and these have this yellow, I'm just going to press G to go to fill. I'm going to grab not the bright spots, not the dark spots, something in between. Just going to click this, go up a layer, G. Now if I just do this, you see how it eats the darks and the lights? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to multiply first. And multiply is going to not destroy the darks. It will hurt the light some, but I'm just going to try to match the tone. Alright, I think that works. Just going to merge those. I'm going to hide this thing. And now I'm going to imagine I'm going to move this around. So I'm going to grab it, I'm going to scoot it up here. I've got some sections that go on the outside. I'm just going to grab it, delete those. And if you see this, I can't quite get them in. It's not working very well. So I'm going to grab this texture, and I'm going to ignore where my lines are. I'm just going to scoot it over here. M lets me switch to the rectangular marquee selection tool. Just rapidly, just giving myself some room. And I'm going to duplicate this texture so I can use it for the sides and everything like that again. Maybe do something like that to it. Alright, I'm going to turn off these lines, and I'm going to say File, Save As. Now, if you're going to come back and you're going to make changes, you're going to want to save this I'm going to change it from lines. I name them builder, and I'm going to save it instead of a PSD. PSDs don't give me a thumbnail, so I can't see what they are outside of Photoshop, and I have to open Photoshop to look at them. A TIFF has everything a PSD has, except for I can just double click and just look at the picture. It'll also keep the layers. Just going to hit save. I'm going to get rid of any layers. And I might keep them just to take a peek. All right, let's go into Max. Let's go Alt W or F3 to see them. I'm going to press M to go to materials. I'm just going to drag that picture in. Base color. Sometimes it takes a second if the picture is large. Now, if you look at this, it's not lining up because I moved some stuff. I'm going to go X for search, unwrap, UVW. I want to see the picture, so I'm going to go here, stretch this out a bit. Now this, I'm just going to scoot these out, and the same with these. Now this is the floor. I'm going to come over here, scoot in, same thing with this one. And you can always make adjustments, you just don't want to adjust them too much. Holding control so that they don't stretch like this. I'm going to grab these pieces, and I'm just going to say they're stone. I'm just going to scoot them here. And I'm going to say these are stone as well. I'm going to hit F4 to turn off the lines. And let's see, I'm just going to convert to editable poly. I'm going to press G to get my grid back up, W to go to move, and turn my snap on. And I'm going to hold Shift, scoot it over, and I'm rotate, hold Shift. I'm just going to test everything. Hold Shift. Let's just if you'll notice, this process is pretty long and we haven't even made anything interesting. So you want to use as few pieces as you can get away with and think about how you're going to use them intelligently. I'm going to hit G to turn that off. I'm just going to take a look and see how everything's tiling. Now I'm getting some dark spots right in here, so I'm just going to grab the original. That's this one. And these bricks, I don't like that line in there, but it looks like it's all right. I'm going to grab just the original. I'm going to hit X, unwrap, UVW, grab this face, open UV editor. Shrink the window down some. And now I'm not going to look at this one, I'm going to look at these. I'm just going to grab this edge. If I press 1 to vertex and grab it, I'm going to in fact, I'm just going to grab the whole thing so I can make sure that it's proportionate by holding control. Just going to look at this edge. removing tiling altogether is considerably difficult. Now let's look at these bricks. Not bad. All right, convert to editable poly. That's just going to save my unwrap. And now with just 2 objects, I can build quite a bit of stuff. The same techniques will be used for the other objects. We just build 1 or 2 at a time. All right, next time we're going to come back and we're going to build the door and the arch.